Hey, Professor here. Welcome to my pre-BFA guide for the Protection Paladin. And so what we'll start with is talents, and then we'll go over gear and legendaries. After that we'll do some add-ons, keybinds, and macros, and then lastly we will talk about playstyle and abilities, and we'll do some killing of target dummies. Anyway, let's get started with talents. So we'll start this first row with Holy Shield. Notice how it's very similar to the old talents, with the exception of Consecrated Hammer. That has been swapped out for Redoubt. And so Holy Shield, pretty much the same as it was. It always increases your block chance. That's great. And you're also able to block spells, which is amazing. And then, as long as you're going against spells, but just overall it's nice as well. And then anytime you block, you're dealing damage. So a little bit of everything here. It's very strong talent. You can actually get that with the ring too, which at some point you won't be able to wear, but I do tend to wear the Soul of the High Lord every now and then. So for Redoubt, that's your new one. They kind of took the legendary legs a little bit and threw it into a talent here. It does increase the amount of targets that your Avenger Shield is going to hit. And so usually your Avenger Shield hits your current target and then an additional 2 nearby targets, but when you switch to Redoubt, it is going to hit an additional 3 nearby targets. So really helpful when you have multiple enemies. And then it also significantly increases your block, not your block chance, but your block. It's for 8 seconds, and it's pretty much always up, because with your Avenger Shield resets and you're throwing those out like every 11 seconds, you're really going to be able to have that buff on almost all the time. And then the last one would be Blessed Hammer. So Blessed Hammer is pretty much the same as it used to be. Really good for reducing auto attack damage. And it doesn't really feel as good as it used to, but it's still a really good choice. I like it for kiting. So if you go that ability and then you kind of walk forward and run a little bit, so you're able to kite and allow them to move into those hammers. And if you don't have that, then you're stuck with Hammer of Righteous, which does do a significant amount of damage still. I would argue that it probably does more damage, at least a single target, and in the right situations while you're standing in your Consecrated. It's just a little trickier to use, and you have to be in melee range, and so it's not the end of the world, but Blessed Hammer definitely has its place. So I'd say the first row was, the most confusing as to what should you do. But at this moment, I'm going with Redoubt comboed with Holy Shield. They really do work pretty well with each other, especially with your 4-set and all that stuff. But we'll see how everything flushes out in the expansion. So this next row is not really as confusing. It's very similar to the old talents, the First Avenger, Bastion of Light, Crusader's Judgment, and what you're going to do is you're going to go with First Avenger for really mainly, I would say, AoE situations and just for damage. Really, it's really buffs your Avenger Shield like crazy, and it allows it to reset more often. So I would say in a situation where you can make maximum use out of your Avenger Shield and you're not as worried about your defensive situations, then First Avenger is still really a good choice, especially if you are rocking the legendary legs, and so make sure you synergize all your stuff together. But Crusader's Judgment, I'd say in general, is a really good choice, especially since your Shield of Righteous is going to slam enemies in front of you, so pretty much all enemies in front of you, and then your Judgment is going to reduce the cooldown of that Shield of Righteous. And then if you spec for Righteous Protector, your Righteous Protector is going to then have, every time you shield with the Righteous, reduce the remaining cooldown of your Hand of the Protector, so it all flows together nicely. So it definitely depends on the style that you want to tank. If you're more damage oriented, if you're more defensively oriented, but I'd say in general Crusader's Judgment a great choice. I do not recommend going Bastion of Light. I think it's a little bit underwhelming. I mean, if there was a situation where you knew you needed 3 charges right away, maybe, but I'd say Crusader's Judgment is pretty much better in every situation. That's going to allow you to make maximum use out of your Judgment, which is going to allow you to get more Shield of Righteous off anyway. So overall, I would probably say Crusader's Judgment, but First Avenger is still very, very good. Then your next one is going to be Fist of Justice. I'd say, yet again, if you go Crusader's Judgment, you're making maximum use out of your judgments, and so you're judgmenting much more often. Fist of Justice is going to be amazing because you're judgmenting all the time, and you're going to be able to get that cooldown reduced quite a bit. So in a particular situation where you need the CC, maybe you want to roll Repentance or Blinding Light, but I'd say overall probably stick with Fist of Justice. Then you have Retribution Aura, which yet again is pretty underwhelming, I should say. You don't really want that. Compared to Cavalier, I mean, Cavalier is going to allow your mobility to just pretty much double. So you're going to be able to have 2 stacks of your Divine Steed. I would recommend doing Cavalier most of the time. However, Blessing of Spell Warding is amazing. Anytime you are going against magic damage, massive magic damage hits, certain boss fights that they have a mechanic that deals a ridiculous amount of magic damage, like a high mythic plus whatever. You really want to consider going Blessing of Spell Warding. It is going to replace your Blessing of Protection, but it's only going to have a 3-minute cooldown instead of a 5-minute cooldown. So this Blessing of Spell Warding really nice for magic immunity. Really can get you out of some sticky situations. So consider that for sure. But overall, I'd say Cavalier unless you need that Blessing of Spell Warding. Next, we're going to go with most likely Hand of the Protector. If you don't go Hand of the Protector, then you're going to have this Light of the Protector, which is 12-second recharge instead of a 10-second recharge. So Hand of the Protector, you're going to get off more often, and then you can also use it on allies, which really just completely changes what you're doing, really. I mean, you're able to then help other people. You can throw heals on the off tank. You can throw heals on somebody who's pretty much about to die. It is changed a little bit though. I'm not quite sure how I like it. Instead of healing, I believe it was like 30% of their missing health or something like that. Now it's increased by up to 200% based on your missing health. So it's, I don't know. That means pretty much when you're trying to heal somebody else that's low, and you're actually at full health, it's not as good as it was. It's kind of disappointing, but I do think that overall this is probably the best choice here. Final Stand is interesting. It might have its applications in a situation where you are tanking like an entire room of people. You're doing a really quick run of something and you have to run in and you really just want to pull the entire room and have them on you for 8 seconds. Maybe Final Stand would be a good choice there. Unbreakable Spirit, definitely another interesting choice. It reduces the cooldown of your Divine Shield, Argent Defender, and Lay on Hands by 30%. So Argent Defender is 2 minutes right now. If you were to spec for this, it would be a 1.4 minute cooldown. I most likely am going to go with Hand of the Protector. I do enjoy being able to heal other people. So let's move on. Judgment of Light, Consecrated Ground, Aegis of the Light, Aegis of Light. It's a pretty straightforward choice. You're going to go Consecrated Ground. It no longer heals you, but you're going to go this if you want to kite. That's pretty much all this is for. It just increases the size of it, and it's going to reduce enemies' movement speed by 50%. So in a situation where you can't slow or you're not moving a lot and you don't really want to kite, don't go this ever. Okay, so Consecrated Ground is only when you want to slow people. And then Judgment of Light is going to be healing, so definitely if you want some passive healing for the raid, this is a great choice. However, Aegis of Light is very interesting as well. So it's going to give you that extra cooldown. remember that we lost our artifact ability. So now if we go Aegis of Light, pretty much I put this right, I never really used to use this, but I put this right where my artifact ability used to be. It's a 3-minute cooldown, and when you use it, it looks really awesome, and it also protects the people behind you, and it's actually makes it pretty easy for them to figure out where they need to stand because of the animation or whatever. So it's going to protect you and anybody behind you for 20% reduced damage, and that's for 6 seconds. So I'd say definitely this is a really strong cooldown for your raid. So really consider running Aegis of Light or Party, whatever. Like especially if there's a particular point in a boss fight where there's a lot of damage coming out and you're able to stack up like that. If you can make use of it, I'd say this is by far the best. But if you can't make use of this cooldown very easily, then just Judgment of Light is going to throw out some passive heals. Then the last thing here, Last Defender, each enemy within 8 yards, it's going to reduce the damage that you take, and then it's going to increase the damage that you deal. So it'd be actually pretty interesting if you went like, let's say, Last Defender and then Final Stand, because then you're kind of set up for pulling like an entire room of people. Or if you're doing some old school runs or whatever, your goal is to pull as many people as you can. Each enemy within 8 yards is going to reduce the damage that you take and also increase the damage that you deal. So if you're set up for crazy multi-target, Last Defender combined with Final Stand would be cool, because you pull the whole room, you're taking reduced damage, a ton of reduced damage, doing a ton of increased damage, and then you're going to use Divine Shield, and you're going to be taunting all those targets for another 8 seconds. So that could lead for a really cool play there, but I'd say overall you're not going to do that. So Righteous Protector is going to be usually my go-to. So this is going to allow you to get more heals off, and so this has some really good synchronization, synergy with Crusader's Judgment. So you're able to Judgment a bunch, and then you're able to Shield the Righteous a bunch because of that, and then because you're Shield the Righteous or whatever, you're going to be able to handle Protector more often. Notice how I do have 2 charges because I'm wearing the Legendary headpiece, but we're not going to have that. So it'll be nice. It'll be nice to have that reduction on the heal. Otherwise, it's you can only really do it once every 10 seconds, which it's all right. But I'd rather actually, if I take the headpiece off, I think it's 11 seconds. So anyway, definitely a good choice. It's also going to allow you to use your Avenging Wrath more often, so it's going to reduce the remaining cooldown on that as well. So Avenging Wrath is definitely a strong cooldown as well. It's not going to increase your I believe it was damage and healing by like 35% like it used to be, but they did tack on that crit to it, so you are going to have a 20% increased crit chance. So hey, I mean, while you crit it, you're going to be much more likely to crit with your Judgment during that time, and then that's going to be reducing the cooldown more on your shield, which is, I guess, going to allow you to get more Hand of the Protectors off. But yeah, I think overall still a very strong choice. And then you're going to rock this when you don't really care as much about getting that extra armor, and you're more focused on just damage. So notice how I have this right next to my Shield of the Righteous when I spec for it. It's just a good damage overall cooldown. It increases your defensives too. So overall, it's a good choice. The problem is it does consume 2 charges of your Shield of Righteous. So you're going to be losing out on that armor. So I would say that it's more of an offensive choice, but hey, still a strong choice overall. So you got to kind of pick your poison. I think I'm most of the time going to be rocking the Righteous Protector because I just like that synergy that I had explained. So that pretty much covers the regular talents. The PvP talents, though, are more relevant than they ever have been, so we need to talk about them briefly, because now you can activate War Mode and kind of use them whenever, and I am pretty experienced with PvP. I do have the Arena Master title and got 2700 in 3v3 achievement as well, so I can kind of speak from experience on these talents. So this Gladiator's Medallion is probably what you're going to want to go with, because you want to choose when you want to get out of things. These other things are more passive, especially adaptation. That just, I mean, it's going to be helpful, but if a lot of times you get CC'd and it's like, oh, I don't really care, like, and then sometimes you get CC'd and it's like, wow, I really need to get out of this. So having that choice is nice. So I would rock Gladiator's Medallion overall. Relentless would be nice too, though. Just a general reduction of incoming crowd control effects. Next one would be Guardian of Forgotten Queen. That is, I would say, a must. That allows you to use your Guardian on other people, and it also is a 3-minute cooldown. So let me go to something else. So it's usually a 5-minute cooldown, and then it empowers you. And then this allows you to put it on somebody else. And so let's go back again. This says it reduces all damage you take by 50% for 8 seconds. And then this is you're immune to all damage for 10 seconds. So, and it's on a 3-minute cooldown instead of a 5-minute cooldown. So you pretty much have to get this. It's amazing. It's just not even an option. Then Steed of Glory. You probably are going to go with this. Your Divine Steed is going to last 2 seconds longer. Definitely strengthens your mobility, and you're also probably going to have the Cavalier, so your Divine Steed is going to be awesome. And then it says while active, you become immune to movement and parrying effects, and you knock back enemies that you move through. So this is really cool. It can be used to kind of interrupt people too. You just run through them and it just knocks them back, and it's really an awesome feel to it. It's got an awesome feel to it, so I'd recommend Steed of Glory. Then Inquisition is going to replace your taunt, but it's going to allow you to just get 3%. You're pretty much always going to have 3% increased damage on the target. So I mean, there's some other choices here that are nice, but after reading through them, it's like, I'm probably going to go with this. It's probably the best option. It is going to increase your damage dealt to that target by 3% pretty much always, because you're going to be attacking that target. But then it says for each unique player that attacks the target, it's going to be able to stack up an additional 3% for up to 5 times. 5 times 3, 15. So you get an extra 15% damage on that person if you have other allies helping you. So definitely I would recommend going with that. It's going to help out people's damage to that target. And that is pretty much it now for the talents and the PvP talents. Let's move on to the gear and legendaries. So for the gear and legendaries, right now I kind of have 2 setups. One is with the more of a defensive setup, I would say. I'm rocking with the Holy Shield and Redoubt, which allows me to not only have the increased block chance and stuff, but it also it combos with the Redoubt, which increases my block by 75% pretty much all the time, which also kind of combos with my 4-set, which increases my block chance, and then my 4-set as well. So kind of block is just what I'm doing right now is really, really good, especially right as we speak when we have the 4-set and we have the legendaries. After everything flushes out, when you level up, it might be a little different. I'm most likely going to rethink the way that I'm doing things, but as of now, it's really good. I like the headpiece because this is like my defensive setup. So I have the Soul of the High Lord and I have the headpiece, because then you have 2 charges. And so another setup that I have, though, which is equally as awesome but has a different purpose, is equip. And sometimes I'll switch my gear right in the middle of a raid or an instance, or in between pulls. So remember, you can do that. You can set it up and you can have a button on your you can drag it onto your toolbar, and then you can switch to your gear. And so the legs, which is going to Avenger Shield, deals 20% increased damage and jumps to 2 additional targets, plus I have the additional 1 target potentially from here, which would be awesome. And in this case, I would want to switch to First Avenger most likely, because it would be all about my Avenger Shield at that point. But the point is here, this is kind of like a damage setup for like pulling a bunch of stuff and just doing a crazy amount of damage and kiting and stuff like that. And remember, kiting, you would want to switch to Consecrated Ground and stuff. But yeah, the Safuz Secret, that is awesome. It's just allows you to run around like crazy and kite and just do awesome damage. So I'd say Safuz Secret's still really good with the legs for damage. And there's some other options too. I'm not going to say that there's not. There's that other ring that while you're standing in your Consecrated or whatever, you take less damage. There's definitely some other options, but I think that those are my two go-tos right now. So we'll go back to this one. And I think overall you're probably just going to want to look for item level and kind of be done with it. But you know, we'll have to see how things play out with the secondary stats, and I'll be coming out with another guide once BFA is out and I have some experience tanking the new stuff and get a feel for the new gear and the new Azerite armor and all that stuff. So for now I don't want to really say too much more about gear. Alright, other than remember that I forgot to say this earlier, just I would go through, I recommend, and figure out what you don't have anymore. Just so that you can adjust your playstyle accordingly. A lot of the stuff they kind of rolled into talents or passives or whatever, but I do think it's important to kind of look back and see what you don't have anymore, and realize that your artifact weapon doesn't really matter much anymore, except for item level. So that being said, I think we're good with gear and legendaries. Let's switch over now to add-ons, keybinds, and macros. So for add-ons, for my interface, I have Z Pearl. That's what you see here. I like that. I can put my focus. Got a focus target come down here, stuff like that. For my bars, I have Bartender, and my keybinds, Bartender 4. I can put any bars wherever I want. I like it set up this way so I can have everything that I care about during a fight right beneath my feet. I can monitor it, and then I have my raid frames off to the right usually. That's just how I prefer it, but definitely allows you to really highly customize your setup here and do what you want with it. And then you're probably going to want weak auras, so /WA. That's going to keep track of your cooldowns for you. So like for example, when I pop Argent Defender, it's going to start a little bar for me, and then at the end of that bar it's going to make a noise, a specific noise that I recognize, like kind of like Pavlov's dogs, like I've said in other guides, and it's pretty much programming your brain to say, hey, like this noise happens, your brain is going to associate that noise with this ability, and you're not even really going to have to think about it anymore. It's just allowing you to free up your consciousness to make better decisions. So that is weak auras. It's really just for cooldowns and stuff like that, and sound feedback. So look into weak auras for sure. And then you want some damage meters, damage taken, stuff like that. My spells, healing done. Definitely have some sort of data collecting add-on. And you're also potentially going to want pawn. It's mainly for ret, I would say, like simming your gear and stuff like that. But hey, it's still not too bad for prot. It just kind of gives you the percentage upgrades on your gear and stuff like that. You might want to customize your stat priorities so that it tells you things correctly. But I think overall it's pretty good for add-ons. Clearly as a tank you're going to want like Deadly Boss mods and GTFO, like make sure you're not standing in anything bad and some other things like that. But overall that I think covers the add-ons. I noticed though that when you kind of want to come out here just for a second, when you do your taunt, let's see, that triggers a global cooldown, and then when you do your bubble, that also triggers a global cooldown. So it's kind of interesting, but I do have a macro that I wanted to talk to you about just for a sec. it is a bubble macro, so I am able to cancel my aura, so I can bubble and then I can cancel it. So that's still relevant as a prop paladin. You still may want to, I know that they kind of messed around with the global cooldowns and things, especially when you heal and stuff like that. It's definitely a pain to do some of the things that you were able to do before, but I would say overall it's still a good macro to have, just to be able to bubble and then, you know, for a few seconds or whatever, and then cancel that bubble on the same button. So maybe have a macro like that. And then, you know, sometimes, for example, like this, I can macro in my Argent Defender to one of my trinkets that I'm using. You know, anything like that where you can make your life easier. That's kind of what you want to do with your macros. I think that's pretty much it for macros. Keybinds, just make sure that you have, I would say, similar abilities next to each other. That's what I do. I mean, it just makes my life easier, makes me think less. You know, my Shield of the Righteous and my Seraphim I have right next to each other. My 2 heals I have right next to each other. You know, 2 of my damage things I have right next to each other. 2 of my interrupts I have next to each other. My taunt and stuff is the same for all 3 specs, so you're looking for consistency across the specs too if you play all 3 specs like I do. Make sure you're buffing yourself, stuff like that as well. But hey, I think that overall that covers add-ons, keybinds, and macros. Let's finally get into our playstyle and abilities. So what you're going to want to do is, let's take a look at my spec here. So assuming that we're not using Blessed Hammer, let's kind of take a look at things work. So this Redoubt, we'll kind of show you how that works real quick. So this Redoubt, you'll see the buff right here, it says block increased by 75%. So let's go into here, we'll take a look. So let's do it again. So it says blocking the damage of an attack, and then watch, it's going to go down. So definitely increases, it does not change your block chance really, but it does increase the amount of damage that you are able to block when you do block, which currently is really awesome because of how much chance of block you have, especially when you combo that with Holy Shield. So that is how that Redoubt thing works, if you're wondering. And so that's kind of how I'm rocking it right now. And another couple things that you want to be familiar with is your consecration. So when my consecration is down, it says Hammer of Righteous also causes a wave of light to hit the, so it's buffing your Hammer of Righteous. So really you don't want to do Hammer of Righteous until you're in your consecrate. The other thing that consecrate does is just reduce the damage that you're taking. So you're definitely going to always want to be in your consecrate, which is not that hard because it lasts for 12 seconds and it's only on a 3.4 second cooldown. And so notice how when you drop 1 and then I come over here, it's still active. When I drop another one, it kind of cancels the first one. So notice how it says limit 1. So you really do not have to use this on cooldown by any means. It's kind of just a filler. Just make sure you're in it, and then if you're moving you can continue to drop it, especially if you're kiting with it with your consecrated ground. But the general idea here is that you want to be in your consecrate and you don't necessarily need to refresh it every 3.4 seconds. It's kind of pointless. So you just drop it, make sure it's down, make sure when it wears off you refresh it, and then make sure you have it down before you do your Hammer of Righteous, because that's going to cause that to do some extra good stuff. See how it's kind of cleaving to that target, and then if I don't have it, it's not really cleaving anymore over there. So it's really nice how Hammer of the Righteous is going to be able to hit all other targets within 8 yards once you are in your consecrate. Let's see what else. So when you when you do your Shield of the Righteous, make sure you understand that gives you extra armor. Also make sure that you know that your Judgment, watch the cooldown here, your Judgment is reducing the cooldown on that, especially when it crits. That's if you spec for Righteous Protector. So be aware that that's kind of synchronizing together, and if you have the double stack Judgment, you pretty much always want your judgment to be less than 2 stacks, and you always want your shield of righteous to be less than 3 stacks, so that way it's making use of, you know, being on cooldown. So you know, when you get into the fight, one of the first things you're going to do is judgment and then shield of the righteous, just to get it on cooldown, and then you're good to go. And try to make sure that you are using shield of the righteous right before a big hit. So shield of the righteous is a huge defensive, so for 4.5 seconds you get a ton of extra armor. So let's actually investigate that for a second. So you can look at your armor right here. Physical damage reduction is, it says 48%, and then it also says against current target, but it says 48%, and then I'm going to hit my shield here, and then it says 68%. Alright? You don't have to be good at math. Look at that. 48%, 68%. Okay? Significantly increased armor. And so like that's like an extra 20% physical damage reduction. And so you definitely want to do that when you're about to take a hit, like a strong melee attack. And then if you're rocking Blessed Hammer, you would want to make sure that that next auto attack is reduced by an additional 12% as well. And then also you can use that Blessed Hammer if you're, you know, let's just use it real quick. A lot of times I like to use it, let's say I'm kiting with Consecrated Ground. Enemies are walking through it. I like to kind of do that and like kind of walk with them, and then run. Then you can kind of run into them, and they're not going to hit you as hard. So Blessed Hammer's, I think, pretty good for kiting. The problem with if you're not using Blessed Hammer, then you have to be in melee range. So it's not really all that good for kiting. It's all right, but I definitely would prefer Blessed Hammer for kiting and reducing auto attack damage. Let's see. So the next thing I want to talk about is how you are going to be using your heal. So remember, your heal is healing you more when you're low. So let's attack this guy real quick. So when I'm at full health, watch, full health, it's going to heal me for 5,700. Let's get down. That's not a lot. So if I'm at full health, I'm going to also be healing other people for that much too. So if I'm low though, let me get low. This will be fun. I'm gonna try something else. So I'm gonna get real low, and then I'm gonna heal somebody else. 12,000 something. So it's actually quite nice. So if I heal other people, it's increased too. I just healed that person for 30,000. So it's actually encouraging you to be low. It works different than it did before, so that's why I'm going over this. It also triggers a global cooldown, so it's a little trickier to time right, but just remember that you're healing more based on your health being low. Right? So that person's getting healed a ton right now. So it's really beneficial to be low, actually, in terms of being able to heal other people and also healing yourself. So you're going to want to wait till kind of you get low potentially, and then watch, I'll throw a heal on myself. 14, and then another heal, 11, and then you get up and it's healing less. So I'm not quite sure how I feel about it. It's still a really good ability, really pretty strong heal that we have. Not sure how I feel about it being able to heal more just based on my missing health. I kind of liked it when it was based on you know, the person that I was targeting's missing health, because then I could wait till they got really low and then heal them. But hey, it's still a strong ability, and you're still going to be able to throw that heal on other people. So anyway, let's just kind of go over just in general what you do, right? So what you're going to pretty much do is probably start off with an Avenger Shield to get that on cooldown. So when you first run in, you want to generate a whole bunch of initial threat. You're probably going to wings first, and then you're going to go in, but I'm not going to wings yet. You're going to Avenger Shield right off the bat, and then as you run in, right as your Avenger Shield hits, you're going to then taunt as well. Gives you a whole bunch of initial threat. Then once you get in there, remember, you're pretty much already going to be in there at that point. The next thing that you're probably going to want to do when you get in there is do your Shield of the Righteous / Consecrate. You really want to get your Consecrate down as quick as you can. You don't want to do Hammer of the Righteous for sure unless you have Consecrate down. But you want to get a Shield of the Righteous off quick, but you also, so you don't want to do your Judgment too much either, because remember your Judgment's going to reduce the cooldown of your Shield of the Righteous. So the general idea is Avenger Shield, Taunt, get that Consecrate down, then you can start Judgmenting, and you're reducing the cooldown of your Shield of the Righteous, and reducing the cooldown of that Shield of the Righteous. Otherwise, if you Judgment, it's kind of going a little bit to waste. I wouldn't worry too much about it, but remember that if you're at 3 stacks of Shield of the Righteous, it's really not going to reduce the cooldown of that Shield of the Righteous. So just keep that in mind. It's just a little bit of a technicality. Just it's not going to help you that much, but just being aware of that might help you a little bit. So you're going to want to go in, like I said again, Avenger Shield, Taunt, get in there, Consecrate down, and then start pretty much hitting things that are off cooldown. It's really not too bad. It's kind of it's a little bit face roll here, so we'll get in there, and I'll just kind of show you what happens, just when you get into it. So the idea is I usually want to keep at least 1 stack of Shield of the Righteous up. And notice how I heal myself when I'm low. But you want to keep your Avenger Shield on cooldown, and then you also want to keep this below 2 stacks. So I'm kind of messing things up now because I'm explaining it, but you also want to keep this below 2 stacks as well. So it's a lot of different things to press, and you also want to use your Avenger Shield procs when you get them. So there's just a lot of different things that you're hitting. Remember, Consecrate you do not need to pop on cooldown. You can just, whenever you see your Consecration buff fall off, or when that disappears, you can pop it. So definitely don't really prioritize Consecrate too much, but just make sure you're refreshing it when it wears off. So I'll kind of get into it now. I'll actually try a little bit here, and then we'll see kind of how long I can survive against this thing. I don't want to waste too much time though. It's probably not going to kill me very easily. You get the general idea. And you can try to keep this below 2 stacks too if you weren't in the Legendary Abilities. And what I can also do real quick, really important, is that when I'm taking a hit, watch this next strike that comes in, I want to make sure that I use, did you see how I just timed my Shield of the Righteous? Shield of the Righteous is awesome to time against on a particular attack. And also remember, Shield of the Righteous hits everybody in front of you. Another interesting thing about Shield of the Righteous is you can just use it no matter what. So be careful not to waste it. I've actually done that by accident because I didn't realize that they changed it to be that. But you can actually just use it whenever you want, which is good and bad. I think it's kind of good overall because it also hits everybody in front of you, and it helps you with your AoE threat. But I'd say the general idea here is that you can use your Shield of the Righteous right before a particular attack. Make sure that you have that on so that you have that extra armor when you need it. A lot of times in between attacks, the bosses aren't going to be really doing that much damage to you, and so Shield of the Righteous overall, I would view that as a defensive ability, and make sure that you're saving that for when you really need it. Sometimes if you don't have it up, you will die to a particular boss ability, and you want to make sure you have it when you need it. So I think that in general kind of covers what you're going to do. I just want to explain the synergy one more time if you're running this spec. So Judgment is going to reduce the cooldown of your Shield of the Righteous. Shield of the Righteous is going to reduce the cooldown of your heal. So that's kind of the synergy there. Just make sure that you're using things when they're up and using your procs. Let's talk about cooldowns. Cooldowns are, you're going to want to use Guardian as a last resort. That's like one of your biggest defensives. It's usually a 5-minute cooldown. And so you're going to pop that separately usually to Argent Defender. Argent Defender is a 2-minute cooldown now, and Argent Defender is going to be like a cheat death. So whenever you are really worried about dying, Argent Defender is a great one, or for an attack that it's pretty much, it's going to pretty much kill you the next hit. It's like, okay, pop Argent Defender, you'll be alright, because instead of killing you, you'll be brought back up to 20% health. So pretty much I would use these two separately. Those are your two big defensives. Remember though that you also have Aegis of Light, so I would go be able to use this Aegis of Light. I'll use it real quick. you can use that to just for one attack if you really wanted to. So it is channeled, which kind of is not all that good in a particular situation, because you can't really do too much else. But you know, let's say you're about to get hit big. Hey, that's a great cooldown to use. That's going to give you another 20% reduction. You know, so just get your Shield of the Righteous up, and then right after Shield of the Righteous, you got your Shield of the Righteous buff on, and then you can use your Aegis. Hey, it's a good little cooldown reduction that you could spec for, which I think is more relevant than it has been, in my opinion. And then Avenging Wrath. Avenging Wrath is going to definitely increase your damage, but also your healing. So you can use this defensively too, because your Hand of the Protector is healing more. The other thing I kind of like about this that's removed, I want to mention real quick, is that before, while you were in your Consecrate, you had your Hand of the Protector increased healing, so you don't even have to really worry about that anymore. It is beneficial to be in your Consecrate, but it's not as big of a deal as it was before when it comes to your Hand of the Protector. And also, I want to explain a couple other things in your talents. If you look at your Grand Crusader, yeah, so first of all, this one here. So your Mastery here, Divine Bulwark, reduces all damage taken while inside your Consecrate, which we already talked about. It increases your chance to block melee attacks and increases your attack power. So definitely make sure that you're in your Consecrate. We talked about that already. To reduce your damage. And then Grand Crusader, make sure you know how that works. That's when you're getting your Avenger's shield reset. How that happens is when you avoid a melee attack, or use Hammer of the Righteous. So Hammer of the Righteous is right here. So if you're avoiding more melee, so if you pull a whole bunch of people and you're avoiding, it increases your chance of avoiding melee attacks or whatever. That's you're gonna be getting more procs. And so just make sure that you're aware of that, and that's what's increased when you get First Avenger. So I think that pretty much covers a lot of the cooldowns and how you're going to play. Make sure you're stunning, because when you stun, you are reducing all damage that you're taking, so it's kind of like a defensive in a way. And then make sure you're kiting effectively with Divine Steed. Cleansing, a lot of paladins don't understand that they can cleanse. I don't understand why, but hey, it's not, you can't remove magic, but at least you can remove poison and disease, so be aware of that. There's a lot of situations where you are going to want to be able to cleanse. Also use your Blessing of Freedom to get you out of movement and pairing effects, get other people out of movement and pairing effects, and then also Blessing of Sacrifice, especially on another tank. This is really what makes us a powerful off tank. When the other tank is tanking, we can throw Blessing of Sacrifice on them, and then also Blessing of Protection, and then Lay on Hands. Make sure you're using those when you need to in those situations. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is just the general attitude you need to have as a tank, because this is honestly the most important part before we end the guide. Your attitude as a tank is you are a leader. In my opinion, you are the one that's controlling the pace of the dungeon, the raid. I mean, you're the one that is doing the pulling, pretty much. You are controlling how many people you pull, how quickly you pull, where you're positioned. You are in control for the most part of what is happening, and so you really cannot be selfish. You really have to I've seen way too many I have to spend some time on this, because I've seen way too many tanks and they're selfish and they just pull stuff all around, and they like, for example, if this guy right here is a ranged, let's say it's a frost mage on my team, okay, and I'm tanking somebody, okay, and now I'm going to tank him around the wall. Well, now I just really inconvenienced that mage on my team that was just casting a frostbolt or whatever, because now they have to move, and I just canceled their ability. So don't be that tank that is constantly moving mobs around corners that you shouldn't be, and just doing things movement-wise and boss positioning-wise that you shouldn't. Also, don't position the boss towards the raid when the boss is about to cleave and all that stuff. You really want to make sure that you're aware of your positioning. Positioning is key. Movement is key. When you move, don't turn your back to enemies. So backpedal or like do a diagonal, try like a V motion, like turn like your side to them maybe, but definitely not your back. And so just all that, keep in mind that you are in control. You need to have a good head on your shoulders and be aware of the people around you, and also your enemies, the boss positioning. In a way, I think tanking is one of the hardest things to do. You're worried about other people, you're worried about what they're doing, like where they're positioned, and if they're in line of sight of the enemies. You're worried about where the enemy itself is positioned. You're worried about potentially kiting. You're worried about healing, tanking. You're worried about not dying, obviously. So definitely something to be aware of, and kind of adjust your mindset when you're tanking. Be respectful of your party and your raid. So that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed the guide, and I'm sure that I missed some things, but I will definitely be coming out with another guide for all 3 specs once BFA launches and I get a chance to do I get max level and I get a chance to do some dungeons and raids and stuff like that. I'll eventually be coming out with a BFA guide for all 3 specs as well. So until then, I will see you later, and enjoy your day.